Holy cow, welcome. I'm pleased to be with LaVonne today, tonight. Different sides of the world, moving into different seasons. We've been chatting a little bit off camera, getting to know each other a bit better. We connect through philosophy portal primarily. We both took the Christian atheism course, and that has um, expanded. There was quite an exciting Rosy Cross conference last weekend. Um, in a few conversations that have happened, LaVonne has mentioned her writing process. She's written a couple liturgies now. She's released one this morning on Substack having to do with Good Friday. She wrote one for the Wake Festival last year. Wake is about to happen. LaVonne will be attending. And there's a short story. So we have three potentials that might get into at some stage, depending on where the conversation goes. My drive or my interest here is to get to know LaVonne a bit better, and also to kind of probe into this question of liturgy, of what it is, and also what it would mean to construct it or be in a creative process around it. Um, just the little bit that I know of LaVonne so far, she's a mother, a writer, as I've mentioned. She runs a pizza place in Canada, in a desert in Canada, which is news to me. She's a daughter of a preacher, or at least a man who preached. Recently taken up philosophy studies. Um, yeah, the I think that's a good place to let off. I really appreciate you making time to be with me today and to be on the cow. Um, so welcome, and I guess I'll give you just a moment to introduce yourself and say anywhere you would like this to go or any direction, I guess. I'm terrible at the first question always, but it's your.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just start with what led me to start writing liturgy. Um, so about 7 or 8 years ago, I went through a pretty destabilizing time, like everybody does at some point in their life, where I was trying to figure out how I had ended up where I was. And I had a lot of ideas in my head about what was leading me. Um, I did leave the church bricks and mortar in my adult life. I grew up going to church, but I really had an aversion to prayer because I watched pastors check their watches all the time while they were praying, and people gossip while they were praying, where they weren't really praying for the person. They were just wanting to gossip about, let's pray for this person. They're going through all this strife. And so my prayer life was a lot around just conversating with God. Um, and I was quite neurotic. I grew up in a home where my father was quite a very humble man, very kind, and my mom was very traumatized and quite abusive. And so this was very much a secret. My parents were very loved in our community, and I don't want to deface that. I really respect my parents. I understand now that people can be very triggered and reactive, and I think I was a trigger for my mother. So I was very much the scapegoat, sort of the sin eater of my family. And I could never understand. And that created a neuroticism in me that I was very emotional. And so I had a lot of grandiose ideas of God and where I was going. And of course, once I hit middle age and realized that a lot of these ideas I had were just ideas and it all came crashing down around me, I really went into what in philosophy is called subjective destitution. I didn't know it at the time. I know it now and I can articulate those things. But at the time, I uh, really tried to understand it and was interested in psychology. But everything I was learning in psychology was highlighting for me the trauma of my childhood that I had very much not looked at. I did not see the realities of my life entirely. So this was very, very difficult, and I always had thought I was a better mother than my mom, and only to realize that I had caused harm with my kids. I have 3 adult kids, and so I got really emotionally bad, but I managed to pull out of that and started to look into negative theology. And it started really making sense of and helping me symbolize what I went through. And so when I was at Spark last year, which is actually where I wrote the one liturgy, not Wake, but at Spark, um, I I was at a place where I came to what is called radical acceptance. It's where you've symbolized your trauma and you realize that all the things that you're trying to change in your life to make your life perfect are things that actually make your life perfect. So I don't know how to say that any
Yeah.
differently, but you sort of settle into the realities of your life and you start to enjoy those realities, and things that used to really bother me now make me laugh. And
Yes.
so part of that radical acceptance for me is writing liturgies and tolerating um what once maybe bothered me. Although when I was younger, I did love going to monasteries. Absolutely loved it. There was something about that repetition that was very soothing to me. And so this is why I've taken up doing liturgies this way. For some people, it's very triggering. At one writers group I was at, one woman just wrote it off entirely. She just thought it was your regular general liturgy. And then when she actually listened to the words I was saying, she was like, "Well, this is really different. It sounds like what I know in church, but you're saying very different things." So it's interesting to see people shift once they listen to the words instead of just writing it right off. Yeah. So that's where it
Awesome.
all began. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. Um, a few themes come out for me. I mean, the initial uh, comments about your prayer life as a young person, and then I'm kind of hearing this liturgy construction and sharing as a kind of continuation of that theme or of your prayer life now. So one question, I'm going to try not to kind of overload the questions, but I'm just letting you know the questions that are in mind. Um, I have a curiosity about the standing of your prayer life at the moment, whether it's kind of completely contained in this liturgy process. There's an interesting dynamic there in terms of liturgy as being inherently about or in the context of a people, or I think it's a like a public service or people making, or so the construction of liturgy, it always has the sense of audience, or it has some kind of function to it. So there's something interesting there in terms of a prayer life that is private, and then a prayer life that has this constructive people making um, element.
Yes.
Um,
Can I comment to that?
yes, yes.
Yeah. So growing up, my dad was a pastor, but he was often the associate pastor. And the other pastor at our church, his daughter, she could sing like you couldn't believe. And I just could never measure up. I often just really stayed back. And because I saw all of this, it wasn't all insincere, but lots of times it really was just virtue signaling, what you would call virtue signaling today. And so when I was at Spark, this liturgy came to me, and Peter Rollins did this amazing thing where he had these musicians there that were riffing off of each other, and one would go off in a certain direction, then the others would follow. There was no set music. And then he offered for us to come up and put words to the music. And this really beautiful thing happened where those that were reading or saying poetry were moving with the musicians, and the musicians were moving with the readers and speakers. And so I got up enough guts to actually go up in front of everyone and read this liturgy, which was really huge for me because I refuse to pray in public. Like it was just so damaging. And so to go up and read the liturgy was just really a huge step for me. So bringing that private prayer into a public space, and that was really a special moment. It was really a special moment. But yeah,
Yes.
Mostly it's been for myself, and I'm part of a group with Peter Rollins where we're working on some liturgies, and I don't know if these will make it into that structure of his services, but I hope that on a grassroots level they will move people. But of course, at some point, they will just become dry, brittle, and old, like any liturgies can do, right?
Yes.
So I still write them knowing that that might happen, but
Yeah.
it's this, that's what happens in life, right? The wineskins get old and you need new ones. And
Mm.
so I'm just making kind of new ones in this weird way. So, um, yeah. But yeah, my
That's
prayer life is more probably apophatic, where like I go for walks every day and just sometimes the sound of nature and the music I have in my ears, I feel like I could just go off the ground sometimes. Like I could just close my eyes and walk off the ground. Um, and I think of the story of Moses when he saw the burning bush. And when I was a kid, um, it was always such a miraculous thing, this burning bush, right? Like God was so miraculous. And then you become an adult and you find out that that region often has these bushes that just burn. It was like a normal thing that happens in that area. But what I think is so profound about the story is that Moses wasn't from there. So he had not seen these bushes burn, and he cared to notice this very normal thing within that region that to him was miraculous. And so on my walks, sometimes these very normal, natural things will happen, but they will be very mystical to me. And I now lean into those times. Um, I like them.
yes. No, that's beautiful. I mean, the it was I'm forgetting what conversation it was, but you had expressed something in exactly the way you're communicating now. It's like something that at least through its sheer repetition begins to become a bit dull. I mean, the exact thing was like, my God, why have you forsaken me? This was the line that we were talking about. But somehow even something like that can become um, apparently dead or dull. And there's an art to a kind of excavation, and even like an excavation of an ordinary work that I'm at least hearing in your artistic process and in your writing. And it's the skill of a writer, I think. That's at least how I metabolize it, to be able to resurface that kind of that kind of experience. It's been it was an immediate surprise to me that the subject of prayer came up, and then immediately not a surprise because I mean our subject we're talking about liturgy, but um, it's it's uh it's come up in a very particular way. It's like this interruption that I think is worth just like hanging around a bit because it's so precious, it's so difficult. I mean, and it's so practical. It's such a practical dimension of the more theoretical space that we might consider. Like it's because it's exactly in the domain of the speech that passes between us, like the speech that we use with and then it's this complete mode shift
Mhm.
where we change our reference, and the way in which we
Really
do that
does.
has significant
Yeah.
consequences. And I mean, exactly how you're reporting, it can be damaging, frustrating to the nth degree. It can become this way to uh, try and implicate. So it can immediately become this strange, coercive, um, judging force where you, by means of this like specter or the person who everyone takes themselves to be referring to, try and moderate or regulate what's happening in another's
Mhm.
life. It's like I know I'm kind of laboring this point, but it's like or or at least not quite not quite saying it, but this when prayer gets used in that manner, it's
Mhm.
incredibly
So it's
damaging. And
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how you're presenting two things. You're presenting um the shit. So when you have the liturgy that's going, that's dead, right?
Mm.
There's still within the word spaces where this noetic shift can come in, right? This change in perspective, like you said. So it's both. It's in this superpositioning of both those things. And that's what's so interesting about it.
Yes, the you're saying there's something in the repetition that
Yeah.
can deaden what is repeated, but then
Yeah.
it's also because of the fact of the repetition that it can be a ground or a catalyst for a shift or for a different manner of metabolizing the material that's presented. Um,
And you use the word disrupt, right? It
yes,
disrupts, it comes in.
yes. The for I think there's it's like what was part of the moment that you shared at Spark, and part of it's the way I'm hearing like what was impactful about it. It's both the personal history in terms of the uh, a corrupted prayer life, but then also this dimension of the musicians and something alive in what is happening. So it was prepared material that you brought, but you have to deliver that in the context of uh, music that you don't know where it's going. Like there's something alive about what's happening, and there's when when a body like a people shift their register or their mode of speech with one another such that like it becomes almost like we as a body can speak in one direction or in one way together so that what's being said by you, I can fully participate in that because we've entered into this mode together. Now that's incredibly powerful, but as you're
Hmm.
sharing, it's a because it's so powerful, it's so dangerous, and so it's incredibly complicated for us to um, return to that context. Like it's, sometimes or like pastors will speak about the the one who prays in the context is very much the one who is exercising power. So it's kind of this it's a view to listening closely to the one who's preaching. So if you have theological hang-ups, you're going to like really try and examine what theology they're implying by the way in which they're speaking. Or, but my um, the the thing that I'm trying to get at, or that I'm trying to appreciate now, is this the potency in in the people's prayer, or in a people prayer, or in a people praying. Um, this, yeah, I mean, if I were to, I'm kind of hanging around it because it so surprised me that this theme has come up, and it's dumb that it has surprised me because you're talking about liturgy and prayer and people, but this I think we rob ourselves of an important um, coordinating, we can even say like psychotechnology, when we aren't praying together, or but then it's this whole difficulty of so much is at stake. So how do we do it? We're in an area when we
Yeah.
don't do it, or we like we almost we shying away because of maybe like a prior sense of how powerful it can be. And I guess
Well,
this is
it's kind of like the people in Moses' territory that have disconnected from the phenomenon of the burning bush, right? So, like, I've noticed that lately Christianity has really gotten taken through the dirt, right? And I can see why, totally get it. Um, but there is lots of cultures that practice mantras, right? Like you look at the whirling dervishes, it's mantras and dance, this repetition, and then this metaphysical thing disrupts what's going on, right?
yes,
Now, if you grow up with that, it becomes your normal. It becomes less metaphysical. It's the burning bush that's burning all the time. What is that? I see that every day, right? So we have lost touch with these powerful liturgies that are rich in our culture. We are not,
yes,
it is not that the West has a dead culture. It actually has a very rich culture, just as filled with bad and good as any other. And so I guess I'm maybe just caring to notice that. I'm
yes.
caring to notice that there's something in the burning bush that I want to keep um, and work with. And
Mm,
when you do these mantras, these these things can disrupt you. I like how you said techno psychology. That's interesting. So I'm writing, I've written a manuscript that right now is in the process of being edited structurally. So I have a ways to go yet until this book will be published. But it's been a difficult journey because it deals with technology um, that a lot of people don't understand yet, especially in my writers groups. Not to be ageist, but some of them are older and they don't understand mixed reality or even virtual reality or what an Oculus is or anything like that. So I'm having to explain all this stuff that the younger generation understands innately. But it's interesting because these repetitions are really are interesting. They are a type of technology. So I've written this short story that sort of shows how that noetic shift comes in through
mm,
repetition. So
ah,
in the story, um, the protagonist is it's set in the future where everyone is in mixed reality. So basically, you could create an avatar from your mind and have it interact with other people, right? Everyone's got brain computer interfaces. There's like neo cyborgs, is what I call them, who are humans that now have AI um, brain computer interfaces that manage everything. So the protagonist is going through this process of mixed reality therapy where she's allowing the parts within herself to engage with them to undo the trauma. So in therapy, you do role play like this, but what she's doing is with an actual avatar. So her mother, who's passed away, she's created this avatar of her mother, and she's been engaging with this mother avatar to try to undo what happened as a child. And so with that backdrop, that would help you understand a little more what's happening in the story. But it depicts this noetic shift where we see how we create ideas of something that sometimes need to come down, but through the repetition of talking about it, this thing disrupts her. So
Uh,
maybe I'll read that and we'll
yes,
move into,
yes,
okay. All
good
right,
idea.
it's called Noetic Shift. Rebecca placed a glass of water on the coffee table and laid back on the chaise lounge. An analyst handed her an oculus, then took a seat in behind her. Rebecca and the analyst swooped their hands, conducting virtual icons until the room transformed into the design and color of Rebecca's childhood home. A little girl appeared. Becky? Rebecca said. The child did not answer. She stood clutching a security blanket with tears in her eyes. I hate my mother, Rebecca said. It's as if what happened doesn't matter to her at all. She keeps turning situations back on me. Situations? The psychoanalyst asked. Well, you heard her. In our last session, she literally asked me how much she'd have to bleed until I took a good hard look at myself. This isn't about me. It's about what she did, isn't it? She's the one who needs to take a good hard look at herself, right? The avatar you made of your deceased mother needs to take a good hard look at herself? Rebecca paused to consider the error she had made. My real mother and I argued all the time, right up until the day she died. How's this any different? I know I need to reframe my childhood experiences from a different perspective, but geez, she was a horrible mother. And what about the avatar you created of her? What do you think of it? Well, it's created from the mental structures of my mind. We had no digital footprint. It can only be what I remember of my mom. So I guess you're right. It'll never act or think exactly like my real mother. Rebecca's eyes darted back and forth. Anger burned inside her. But I still feel the same way. My mother was violent. If she didn't treat me so badly, I would have married differently. Married differently? Well, at the very least, someone who would have treated me better. The words, "You will marry Mark," floated through the middle of the room. Rebecca sat up and swung her feet to the floor. She pushed the oculus up to her forehead and rubbed her eyes. Despite her mother's behavior, Rebecca knew she had chosen to marry Mark based on this advice. She wrung her hands in her lap. The analyst said nothing. In the corner of the room, Becky Sniffle hiccuped and wiped her nose with the blanket. Rebecca pulled the immersive device over her eyes again and stared at the idiom. This is the phrase that crossed my mind when God told me I was supposed to marry Mark. So I guess I can't blame my mother, can I? She slumped back into the chaise lounge, her cheeks flushed. What if the God who sent me this message functions like my mother's avatar? She sat up. You know what? An hour before the words came to me, I had experienced an earthquake. I thought I was going to die. Afterward, I felt as if I had endured God's wrath. God's wrath? I'd been behaving in ways frowned upon by the church. It felt as if the earthquake was a demonstration of God's power, like God took me by the shoulders and shook me for being bad. Was this the first time you felt this way? Becky came forward and picked up the glass of water. The real glass remained on the table, but another glass appeared in her hand. Stop it! Stop drinking water, Becky! You'll pee the bed! The avatar of Rebecca's mother entered the room. She yanked at the little girl's arm. The cup fell to the floor in broken pieces. Now look what you've done! Becky stiffened while her mother shook her shoulders. Rebecca had had enough. She picked up the blanket, swung it over her shoulders, and engulfed Becky in her embrace. The smell and feel of the blanket felt familiar and safe. Rebecca squeezed her eyes together and prayed to the God she knew. She begged for protection in the same manner she had always done, but this time no one came. The long-haired, blue-eyed Jesus that always hung out with her under the blanket did not appear. Forsaken, she opened her eyes. God was dead, and she had torn the blanket in two.
Yeah, that's yeah, awesome. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It's a yeah, there's so many. It's so I guess the one the one direction will go after just this idea of voice and listening to voices and listening to a voice, having that be very defining in your life, and then
Mhm.
having the kind of source or the origin of that voice kind of ripped from under itself, and then you kind of stand with your decision, with the decision you made that was defining in your life, and um, but so that I feel a pulling that way, but then also just it's always good to like I guess try and ponder how paradoxical that moment that you concluded with is. It's like it's the v- the very the very loss is the thing, or the I mean the blanket torn in two. It's even escaping my thinking, my attempt to think it now. It's
Well, the
like
veil tore in two in the temple when
yes,
Christ cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And it just, in that moment, that short story is very near and dear to me, of course. And, in that moment when I realized that I couldn't understand why God would ask me to marry someone that would hurt me. And to that God to me just died. Like there was
mm,
nothing behind that veil, right? The curtain goes into the veil, and there's nothing there, and the God
mm,
that I thought I knew was gone,
yeah,
like I was forsaken, right? And I got to thinking, like, I had always wondered why Christ said that, because Christ was supposed to be perfect and God is perfect. Like, what forsaking was going on? And the church always taught that it was Christ descending into hell, and in order for Christ to take our sins and go into hell, there had to be a separation with God. But I kind of like to think that maybe Jesus had big others too. Maybe Jesus had ideas of things that in the Garden of Gethsemane were really stressing him out. Like he was going through some subjective destitution there, right? And here he is on a cross. Like that is the worst thing, one of the worst things you could ever go through. Like talk about subjective destitution, right? So that was where a spark, you know, opened up for me once I moved right into atheism. Like God died, all the comfort of my security blanket, God died. And then this little spark in this dark place that I was in arose, that maybe there's something here. And of course, Peter Rollins' group talks about this. So I'm not the only one that has made this correlation to maybe that's what was going on for Christ in that moment. And
mm,
now I'm thankful for it, because those ideologies are not something that I use anymore to bypass the parts of my life I didn't want to look at, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So that's processing of that shame in that place that you go to is a really necessary part
yes,
of living a radical life.
yeah,
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 and now the person that I thought was the worst for me has actually become the best to me. And now I refer to him as my road runner because of that Wile E. Coyote thing where, he kills Roadrunner, and then, what's he gonna do? Like Roadrunner's dead. Like, what's he gonna do? And now I realize that all these things that I just thought were so horrible about my husband, I just absolutely love them now, because they are part of what keeps my life alive and fun, you know? And I love that idea of being able to be calm amongst chaos, because there's monks that say they have peace, but they're sequestered in a monastery in a peaceful place. I think you really have peace if you are, in the middle of chaos, and you are able to radically accept that chaos and still remain calm. That to me is a deeper level of peace than even just deleting your world around you and having everything perfect and saying you're a peaceful person, which is what I was wanting to do. I think that was my draw to be a nun, was to isolate and to create some type of peace around me. And now it's just so ironic. I'm writing these liturgies that are so decentering, but are in the format of a liturgy. So it's just ironic. Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, sure. So like, I mean, just off the last thing that you said, like there's something about that format. There's like a grammar to it that was shining through the short story that you just read, and this like it communicates this impossible moment where something happens that is reconciling in your life, that is reconciling in your relationships, but I almost have to like stop myself in terms of because this positivizing something like prematurely or even just positivizing it might be the very thing that is the hindrance to it. So then in
The
a more
spiritual bypass.
yeah like a it's I guess in a traditional sense, like it often gets repeated, like this peace that surpasses all understanding, and that can like mystify something or um, it can do something, but if you to really think about something that can't be understood or that you
Mhm.
can't understand, and the price of that, I mean, the I'm
Mhm.
thinking of this moment in the story. It's the little girl puts the blanket over her head and she starts praying again and somehow the reference isn't there or she's realizing she's not referring to anyone and she in that process um and this is also the what's paradoxical about or hard to think in terms of prayer is that it's the willingness to come to pray even when you doubt the one that you're referring to, or you doubt that you're referring to anything or anyone. It's like
Yeah.
it's that tension that
Yeah.
draws a prayer that is like the engine that gets it moving, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it pulls the
Yeah.
rug out from it, or it's like it tears
Yeah.
the blanket.
The first real prayer I ever heard in my life was watching a movie that I wasn't allowed to watch. It was called Saved in the 90s with Macaulay Culkin. And it was about this girl who gets pregnant before marriage. It's really bad, right? We're not allowed to watch this. And she goes to this Christian school and she finds out she's pregnant and she's standing in front of the school's sign that has this big cross and she's just like fuck, 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 right? And I was just like, that's a prayer. That is the first time I have heard someone
uh,
pray. Like, right?
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, this like if we put this conversation that we're having now into something like a wider context, it's like um, where you're thinking about something like a community functioning or the health of a community, and then you have to involve children, you have to involve like the upbringing of children. Um, so then it's like it's what do we do with prayer, with liturgy then? We taste this sense in which it may be that even in my act of praying, um, I can it posits something that I'm not sure about. And in fact, like my prayers probably it gets more and more honest the more that I'm interfacing that sense of not knowing. So
Yeah.
that's like that's a but this is a um this is one of the, I guess, paradoxical fruits of a prayer life. But then what do
Mm.
we say to to children or to a broader congregation? Um, I mean, like how, I don't know if there's a precise enough question there, but it immediately went there in my mind.
We just let them play.
Yes.
Because play is just the best thing for their brains and development. No indoctrination necessary.
Yes. Yeah.
Let them play and find on their own. They probably know better than we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
There's
yeah.
there's an there's an ethics there. I mean, um, I was reading kind of retelling of the Garden of Gethsemane and then or the Last Supper and then to my two younger brothers this morning. Um, and it was capable of surfacing certain material that was incredibly valuable that it was surfaced.
Mm.
Like trying to think about what kind of dilemma is Jesus feeling in Gethsemane, like, um, and then I don't know where I picked it up, but the sense of like praying with such intensity that you bleed, your
Yeah.
sweat your sweat is infused with blood,
Yeah.
and then it's like how I mean how do you relate to that even or this the the communication. And it's the same thing. It's the thing that is so powerful is at the same time so dangerous.
Mm.
So like I can present this kind of material to my younger brothers and maybe traumatize them
Yeah.
in terms of how I then come with what this means and what this means for you and what this means for and you don't have to look far to hear a story about such a traumatic event, which
Mm.
produces this like recoil from all that the church meant. But it's trying to house this thing or trying to it's a
Mm.
it's impossible that dynamic. But this yeah.
I think it's when we start trying that we fail. So we do. And I have this belief now, um, that, I really tried to do things different with my kids. And when I realized that I harmed my kids, that was really hard. That was why it was so hard for me to forgive my mother, was because she became the scapegoat for me. If my mom hadn't have done what she did to me, then I, wouldn't have inadvertently hurt my kids. And so, I held on to not forgiving her for a long time. And she basically said to me, because I was having these conversations with her and she was gone, I understand Richard Boothby when he says that his son became more real to him in his absence than when his son was alive, his book Blown Away about his son's suicide. I felt that way with my mom. She has been more present to me in her death than when she lived. But I was writing stories of like tearing off her limbs and like, she was in the car where she died and I was confronting her about how she treated me as a kid and like it was horrible. And she eventually just was like, how much shall I bleed, before you realize that you're actually stealing from your own life now. I'm not. I'm not stealing anything from you. And that I hated when she said that to me. But this catapulted me into forgiving my mom. And then I had to face my own ill decisions with my own kids. And that was what almost killed me. That
Mm,
despair, back to Jesus sweating, blood. I always thought he wept tears of blood. And I was so stressed at that time in my life, I actually caused a macular bleed in my eyes.
Wow.
And I remember just thinking, oh, this can literally happen. Like, whoa, right? Like I was like, oh my goodness. So, but it was a dark time. I was very, very, I had thought I had made such a mistake and I thought I needed to end the cycle of abuse and was researching poison to not just kill myself, but my kids as well, and to
Wow.
end that suffering. And that was a very dark year of my life.
Yeah.
But I realized in tarrying with that, as long as I did, that as I listened to my kids tell me how I hurt them, it's such a hard thing to do. But I realized, depending on how I responded to my kids, it created a space for a deeper relationship with them. When I could
Mm.
hear them and say, tell me more about how that hurt you, and and hear how it hurt them, something I
Mm.
wish both of my parents could have done for me, it created a deeper connection with my kids. And so I think that connection that perhaps Jesus had there, there's something to that, that allowing yourself to go into that space where you
Mm.
think it's going to kill you. Something like that, I think, was going on. Some deep
Mm.
realizations. Things were dying, I think, for Jesus, like ideas, belief systems. I don't know. We'll never really know, but there is so much more in those spaces than in all of our ideology.
Mm.
There's no
Mm.
question about that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a place you want to jump into, even though you think it'll kill you.
Yes. Yes. Uh, I mean, it's part of its structure is it's um that it's you kind of you thrown in it, or that you you don't choose the dilemmas of your life, or you don't choose the external circumstance that creates that tension in your direction. So it's not even something. It's not. You don't even have to will it. It's almost it will. Or I mean, the prayer that Jesus makes is like this. Um, like, I know you can. Can you make this not? Can you make this not my situation? Can you make this not the
Yeah.
contingency that I have to undergo? Um,
Yeah, like what if Jesus, this is one that's quite controversial when I talk about it, but I'll say it. What if Jesus, like a parent, you know, comes to earth, if you want to believe in the incarnation, right? Which I still tend to do. Um, with high ideas of the parent he's going to be and how he's going to save us, and realizes, oh my gosh, that none of that's going to work.
yes, yes,
Like, that's quite a realization. Talk about subjective destitution, right? What if he had an ego that I'm going to do a better job than God's done? God made
yes.
all these mistakes in the Old Testament, and I'm going to do it better in this New Testament, and I'm going to, and then discovered like, no, I've totally screwed this up. Like, right? I can't help these people one iota. Like, the only way we're going to help is just to like go into that abyss, man, and we're going. Like, right?
Sure, sure, sure,
Which
sure.
is what a lot of people today are afraid to do. They're not even having kids. And let me
Uh,
tell you, like kids, marriage, like whoever you choose to marry, I don't care. Just it is subjective destitution in itself. And having kids, right? Like it is a level of real sacrifice, and but it is also creates the gap and the
yes.
space of pain where deeper relationship can happen. If I just did
Mm.
everything right for my kids, right? Dinner every day,
Mm.
clothes, roof over their head, nice conversations at dinner. Like, how deep does that get? Not very deep. Not when your kid
Yeah.
comes to you and tells you that something you thought you did really right actually scarred them for life. And you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like, thought I was doing the best, or I was doing the best I could, which is usually what parents say. And then that's so invalidating. Instead, it's like, no, tell me more about that. I want to hear more about how that hurt you. Because the truth is, in social psychology, more harm is done by people who mean well than those with malicious intent, right? That is a truth. Most of us mean well and absolutely gut people. So, like, like, right?
It's so
Anyway.
yeah, it's the I'm quite a bit older than my younger brothers. Um and I would tickle the one, and I thought it was all like fun and games, and it comes out like 7 years later with his therapist that like I took it too far. I was tickling him too much, and then there's this whole process between him and I, and he was like, I had to like try and like I'm sorry, like because it was just too much, like, and I did it, and it's there, and it's just uh I mean this the dynamic that you're speaking of between you and your daughters, and this process of becoming able to just listen to their pain,
Mm,
as well as being the one who was a catalyst or cause for the pain, and
mm,
this kind of dance in that space in terms of um, I can take a posture where I can um, almost enjoy. But as soon as I'm enjoying that, like I don't know if it's like a self-flagellation or something, like because I get some moral sentiment that it's good for me to do that, and then I can almost like it I'm enduring it, but in a particular kind of way. I'm it's an endurance that is accumulating, like I don't know, it's maybe like collecting a scar or something. Like I was able to. Uh, I'm almost like on the side of the one who's giving me the bad news about myself, as it's like acting like this confirmation. And then there's this there's something um that I can't help but use the word like a grammar. There's something like a grammar that is a way of listening that doesn't produce that replication or that accumulation. It's kind of like a through line, or it allows for some reconciliation, and the so that material's actually it's actually released, and the
yeah.
relationship does change. And at least with my younger siblings, that has always meant something like the position of um I don't know if authority is correct, but some kind of liftedness in relation to them is lowered. So it's like the the new relational space that is opened between us has to do with well, them growing, and
Mm, yeah.
the the role, whatever role I thought or was playing in terms of being above them, or lifting them up, is leveled. And it's like
Mm,
the something like a willingness undergo to undergo that, which is at the same time the affording deeper
yeah.
relation, but from the posture of parent or parental, it's a I suppose it's a it's very hard to let go of, and I suppose there's no need to let, or like that last, but like um,
Well, I think when, just to use the example of when your kids come to you and actually say this hurt me.
yeah,
Um, as the one in the moral with the moral obligation to, as the adult, be mature about the situation. So many times parents right away get defensive. We actually go right into like our inner child a lot of times when kids do that. And but what I found was interesting is when I actually leaned in and listened, like really let it crucify me, I guess you could say. It was interesting how what happens is your kids then, when they feel heard, and that you don't like just weep and like become a burden to them where they have to comfort you, but you reflect to them that you've heard and you understand in a way that they know that you have. And then there's this interesting shift because then they will actually become curious about your life and why that happened. But if
Yes.
you try to move there too quickly, it
Mm.
just causes all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I like this because in Rollins' theology as well, the emphasis is on the crucifixion, not the resurrection.
Mm.
And a lot of
Mm.
parents want the resurrection with their kids, right? They want that connecting moment. But first, you have to really hear how what you did hurt them, even if you feel they're lying. You got to understand how perspective works, right? That it doesn't matter if they were lying and you know as an adult that something different was going on. You have to realize that that is how they received it. It was true to them in that lived experience and be able to listen to it.
Mm.
And then there's other times where it is a truth that you disavowed, or, like there's a lot of ways it goes, but
Yeah.
don't shy
Yeah.
away from that crucifixion because that is going to create the space for the deeper, relationship that can come later.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yes.
it's very analogous, isn't it?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So,
I
interesting.
was it's like the beginning of your story with the mixed reality training, you know? It's like
Yeah.
it's a um it is mixed. Like this is very real for the perspective that is there, and um
Yeah.
there's something like a training, like being able to, and it's part of this thing of like the pain of being mistaken or understanding oneself as being mistaken, or like the terror of having your self-image dragged
Oh,
or
yeah.
undermined, or it's a it's uh, well, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
The-
Well, that big other I had built that I had done a better job on my mother. I mean, when that came crashing down around me, like that did almost kill me. But I'm thankful for it now. Had I maintained that I was a better mother than my own, I would have
mm,
never been able to listen to my kids' experience of me.
yes,
I would have been
yes,
impervious to it and caused more harm.
yeah,
I
yeah,
had to let that idea die,
yeah,
right? I had
yeah.
caused harm. Yeah,
It's so difficult to communicate that what what you express now as that crucifying, because I mean because I guess the proximity of the resurrection, or because of the this relentless salesmanship of our culture, or the like this relentless positivization as well. I mean, this like if you just, but the whole thing is that you
yeah,
if you're making the estimation from some kind of, if you just, then you're missing something
yeah,
about or something that's going to make you available to listening. And there has to be that real risk in terms of listening, that
yeah,
there has to be something like like a, I don't know what like an abandon, something like an
yeah.
abandon to listening, that
Yeah. Which is why
otherwise.
I like to see God as a singularity, like Cadell last. But I
Mm.
like to see Jesus and the Holy Spirit as being in this particle wave duality. But
Yeah.
um, Jesus, would have really had to do a lot of listening, hey, walking on earth. A lot of feeling. When you're a singularity, like, are you feeling? Are you listening? No. You're just like this unconscious space of no room for anything, right? So it's like,
Yes.
God, I think in the Old Testament is just man's definition of how to make sense of the metaphysics of things. Jesus walking as a human, and, like, one of the most precious places for me in the Bible is when Jesus wept when Lazarus died, right? Like,
Mm.
to feel the whole moment with
Mm.
others. There's something really profound there that we shy away from because
Yeah.
it immediately, like, I'm almost crying now, right? It
Mm.
overwhelms our nervous system's ability sometimes
Mm.
to sit with that. So that's what the liturgy this morning was all about, is not so much drinking the wine for the embodiment of Christ and resurrection, but the pouring of it out,
Mm.
and allowing yourself, as you break the bread, allow yourself to go into those dark places of your life and drop the crumbs to the floor, each one,
Mm.
and be witness to others in pain.
Mm.
And, instead of drinking the wine, pour it out. Let your feelings pour out and notice around you others' pain and hear it and help them bring voice to it by listening. And I think
Yes.
Jesus did a lot of that and
Yes.
saw maybe that the ideas of kingship and all these things just don't work, right? I mean, that's
Mm.
what negative theology is all about.
Mm.
It's about, we do sometimes need the positive, but we certainly shy away from the negative. And I mean, I feel it. I feel it in my writers' groups. I feel it in my friendships. When I started going into the negative, I lost friends because they don't want to go in that place. They
Mm.
they don't they don't yeah, like, no, everybody wants counseling that's like affirmative, and which I think is great, but we also need counseling that challenges us.
Mm.
And that, I think, is a really profound, radical acceptance is a profound way to live life when you face those darkest places of yourself and you allow all of your ideologies to just die around you and see what
Mm.
emerges.
Mm.
We all focus on the stars, which is a main theme of the manuscript I've written, like, everybody focuses on the stars. When the astronomers turned their cameras to the abyss between the stars, they were told they were dumb. Why do you want to look between the stars? Why aren't you looking at the stars? Well, that's how we found other universes, like
Mm.
galaxies, right? Or other galaxies. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to look into the abyss. You might be really
Mm.
surprised what you're going to spaghettify in a black hole. I'll guarantee you that. It's painful, but, like, you're also going to discover a lot of really interesting things about yourself. And you're going to be able to exist amongst chaos instead of on a mountaintop in beauty and say that you have peace, because you
Mm.
don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Forgetify.
That's a word that my middle son said one day at dinner because he was learning all about black holes when he was in middle school. Yeah, I never forgot it.
Yeah.
Obviously, somewhere in my latent unconscious, I knew that word was going to mean something to me in the future.
From the mouths of babes.
Yeah, we
Uh,
always used to do best and worst. As soon as they got off the bus, I'd have dinner ready and we'd talk about our best and worst. And I thought I was being like a good parent. And then my oldest son said to me, just it wreaked havoc all the way bus ride home. What was he gonna say? He was totally traumatized by it. So here I thought I was doing like this great thing, and yeah,
Yeah, sure.
I was being a good mom, you know. My mom was never home, right? There was never dinner on the table, just big fancy meals with family. But day to day, she worked a lot. There was never really dinner on the table. So yeah.
Mm,
But
mm,
anyway, it's just differences, right?
yeah,
So when you
yeah.
come into radical acceptance, you see how perfect those things actually are.
Mm,
And I hope for my kids they'll come into that too. That though that situation of having to come up with best and first may have hurt, there'll come a time in their life where they'll actually look back to it and say that was actually pretty awesome. So these things can really be in the superpositioning, right? Like my husband can be in the superpositioning of arch enemy and roadrunner I don't want to have die, right? Like so it's like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
really what we make of it, you know.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, if you like, I could read the Radical Holy Wounds liturgy I wrote at Spark. Um, it basically goes through the stations of the cross,
Sure, sure.
and
Is this the one you released this morning or?
no, this is
Okay,
one that this one is a little better to read because it's not formatted like a church service. The one I
okay.
put on Substack this morning is formatted like a church service. So
Yes,
there's the collect and there's you know the congregation all speaking this and then the facilitator does this and then yeah. So it's a little
yeah,
it
yeah.
won't read so well on the podcast. So
Yes.
I think this one would be better. Okay.
Rad, rad.
All right. O split and divided God, grant me the grace that with this remembrance I may honor ontological death and how it impacts me. Praise and honor be given thee, O most split and broken Jesus, by reason of the wound in thy left hand. By this holy and contradictory wound I am changed and given a new perspective. Grant me humbled around those who oppose me, that I may be kind. Deliver me from my own dogma now and by any other ideologies to come, that I may find myself sharing in the glory of thy blessed kingdom in the here and now. Praise and honor be given thee, O split and broken Jesus, by reason of the wound in thy right hand. By this holy and contradictory wound I enter into alienation, and humbly entreat thee to suspend me in holy desire day and night, and in this holy lack preserve me in sacred separation. Praise and honor be given thee, O split and broken Jesus, by reason of the wound in thy left foot. By this holy contradictory wound may I grow curious about my splitting and not seek wholeness to distract myself. I entreat thee by this bitter wound to help me tarry with being divided, that I may forever remain incomplete in time and eternity. Praise and honor be given thee, O split and broken Jesus, by reason of thy wound in thy right foot. By this holy and contradictory wound I ruminate, that by a devout and frequent remembrance of my ontological wounds, I may honor its sacredness and testify my gratitude for the suffering, so that I may remain in accordance with empathy. Praise and honor be given thee, O split and broken Jesus, by reason of the wound in thy sacred side. By this holy and contradictory wound I am gutted, so I may participate in the rigors of the brokenness that creates life. That at the hour of my ontological death I may cry out, my God, why have you forsaken me? And in so doing, receive unction of eternal salvation from salvation. I now pray, O bearer of these wounds, grant unto us each day these same contradictory afflictions. Go ye now in pieces.
Amen.
Yeah.